Ego and Archetype, Part 22. We continue with the dreams. Alright, so Dream 9. I am alone in a great formal garden, such as one finds in Europe. The grass is an unusual kind of turf, centuries old. There are great hedges of boxwood, and everything is completely ordered. At the end of the garden, I see a movement. At first, it seems to be an enormous frog made of grass. As I get closer to see it, it is actually a green man, herbal, made of grass. He is doing a dance. It is very beautiful, and I think of Hudson's novel Green Mansions. It gave me a sense of peace, although I could not really understand what I was beholding. End of quote. In this dream, we have a remarkably explicit representation of the vegetation spirit, which played such an important part in ancient mythology and which has received a comprehensive discussion in Fraser's Golden Bough. The most fully developed image in this category is Osiris as corn spirit, tree spirit, and god of fertility. The death and rebirth of vegetation were episodes in his drama. Quote, the ivy was sacred to him and was called his plant because it was always green. End of quote. On the symbolism of greenness, Jung says, in the sphere of Christian psychology, green has a spermatic, procreative quality, and for this reason it is the colour attributed to the Holy Ghost as the creative principle. And again, green is the colour of the Holy Ghost, of life, procreation and resurrection. An example of the greenness of the Holy Ghost is found in Hildegard of Bingen's greenness, Bingen's hymn of the Holy Ghost. From you the clouds rain down, the heavens move, the stones have their moisture, the waters give forth streams, and the earth sweats out greenness. This passage has a close parallel in an ancient Egyptian hymn to Osiris, which says, the world waxes green through him. Another connection between greenness and resurgent life is found in an Egyptian pyramid text. The passage evokes Khepra, or Copra, or Copri, or Copri. I think that's Coptic. The becoming one. So, Khepra is the becoming one. The scarab god, who is the rising sun. Hail thou God, who revolvest Khepra. Hail, green one. Greenness is an important image in alchemy. Some texts refer to the Benedicta Viriditas, blessed greenness. According to Milius, the soul of the world, or anima mundi, is green. I think he's still quoting Jung. According to Milius, the soul of the world, or anima mundi, is green. Quote, God breathed into created things a certain germination or greenness by which all things should multiply. They called all things green, for to be green means to grow. Therefore, this virtue of generation and the preservation of things might be called the soul of the world. End of quote. In another alchemical text, the feminine personification of the black and rejected Prima Materia says, I am alone among the hidden. Nevertheless, I rejoice in my heart, because I can live privily and refresh myself in myself. Under my blackness, I have hidden the fairest green. Jung interprets this passage as follows. The state of imperfect transformation, merely hoped for and waited for, does not seem to be one of torment only, but of positive, if hidden, happiness. It is the state of someone who, in his wanderings among the images of his psychic transformation, comes upon a secret happiness which reconciles him to his apparent loneliness. In communing with himself, he finds not deadly boredom and melancholy, but an inner partner. More than that, a relationship that seems like the happiness of a secret love, or like a hidden springtime, when the green seed sprouts from the barren earth, holding out the promise of future harvests. It is the alchemical benedicta viriditas, the blessed greenness, signifying, on the one hand, the leprosy of the mills, but on the other, the secret immanence of the divine spirit of life in all things. End of quote. What Jung refers to as the secret happiness accompanying the discovery of the green one would correspond perhaps to the sense of peace which the dreamer describes. For this man who is shortly to die, the unconscious is presenting a vivid and beautiful image of the eternal nature of life, whose particular manifestations are continually passing away, but which is being continually reborn in new forms. The dream expresses the same idea as the words of Paul in his resurrection passage. Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? In Corinthians. Part 5. Completion of the opus, Dream 10. As in Ginsberg's Legends of the Jews, where God was in personal communication with various individuals, he seemed to have assigned me a test, distasteful in every way, for which I was in no way fitted, technically or emotionally. First, I was to search for and find a man who was expecting me, and together we were to follow exactly the instructions. The end result was to become an abstract symbol beyond our comprehension, with religious or sacred or taboo connotations. The task involved removing the man's hands at the wrists, trimming them and uniting them to make a hexagonal shape. 2 triangles, one from each hand, were to be removed, leaving windows of a sort. The rectangles themselves were also symbols of great value. The results were to be mummified, dried up and black. All of it took a long time, was extremely delicate and difficult. He bore it stoically, as it was his destiny as well as mine. And the end result, we believed, was what was demanded. When we looked at the symbol that had resulted from our labours, it had an impenetrable aura of mystery about it. We were both exhausted by the ordeal. End of quote. The dreamer had borrowed in Ginsberg's Legends of the Jews at the house of a friend. The dreamer had borrowed in Ginsberg's Legends of the Jews at the house of a friend, but had done no extensive reading in this book. Also, his knowledge of the Old Testament was minimal. The dream is reminiscent of tasks imposed on individuals by Yahweh, example, Jonah, Hosea, etc. If one's life is governed by the sense of a divine task, this means psychologically that the ego is subordinated to the self and has been freed of ego-centered preoccupations. Something of this idea is indicated by the nature of the task imposed in the dream. A man's hands are to be amputated. This rather grisly primitive image expresses a psychological process. The same image occurs in alchemy as the lion with his paws cut off. And in the extreme form as the dismembered man in the Splendor Solis treatise. This is a picture here with the alchemical drawing. The hands are the agency of the conscious will. Hence, to have them cut off would correspond to the experience of the impotence of the ego. In Jung's words, the experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego. The next step in the dream task is to unite the amputated hands into a hexagon. Here we have a reference to the union of the opposites, right and left, conscious and unconscious, good and evil. The product of the union is a sixfold figure. A well-known sixfold symbol which is also made up of the union of two similar but contrasting elements is the so-called Solomon's seal. Oh, it's the Star of David. It consists of two triangles, one pointing upward and one downward. For the alchemists, it represented the union of fire and water. For others, it has signified For others, it has signified the interpenetration of the trinity of spirit, upward pointing, with the chthonic trinity of matter, downward pointing, and hence symbolize the process of interrelation between the two. The number 6 is associated with the completion or fulfillment of a creative task. In Genesis, the world was created in 6 days, with the final act, the creation of Adam, on the 6th day. Jesus was crucified on the 6th day of the week, according to Jonas Lindus, quoted by Jung. Quote, "The number 6 is most skilled in begetting, for it is even and uneven, partaking both of the active nature on account of the uneven, and of the helical nature on account of the even." For it is even and uneven, partaking both of the active nature on account of the uneven, and of the helical nature on account of the even, for which reason the ancients also named it marriage and harmony. And they say also that it is both male and female. Another says that the number 6 is soul producing because it multiplies itself into the world sphere, and because in it the opposites are mingled. End of quote. Summing up the meaning of these amplifications, the dream seems to say that a task must be performed whereby the powers of the individual ego, for both good and evil, are separated or extracted from their union with that ego. That was a big reveal. Summing up the meaning of these amplifications, the dream seems to say that a task must be performed whereby the powers of the individual ego, for both good and evil, are separated or extracted from their union with that ego and reunited in an abstract or suprapersonal image. When the two rectangular windows are added, a rather eerie effect is created, reminding one of a primitive mask. The net result is a geometrical image, which I would venture to suggest is a symbolic representation of the face of God. Dream 11. There is a darkness, but with a luminosity in it, not describable. A darkness somehow glowing. Standing in it is a beautiful golden woman with an almost Mona Lisa face. Now I realize that the glow is emanating from a necklace she is wearing. It is of great delicacy. Small cabochons or cabocons of turquoise, each circled in reddish gold. It has a great meaning for me, as if there were a message in the complete image. If only I could break through its elusiveness. End of quote. The dreamer, who was quite uninformed about philosophy and religion, did not know the opening passage in the Gospel of John concerning the Logos. It is certainly relevant to the dream. Quote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." End of quote. John's Logos doctrine applied to Christ, the Logos theory of Hellenistic philosophy. Christ became the creative word or thought of God who had been with him from the beginning. In Gnostic circles, the Logos was equated with Sophia, the feminine personification of wisdom. The same image had already appeared in the Hebrew wisdom literature. For instance, she is mentioned in this prayer of God. "With you is wisdom, she who knows your works, she who was present when you made the world. She understands what is pleasing in your eyes and what agrees with your commandments." M. L. von Franz, in her Aurora Consurgens, has discussed at length the figure of Sophia or Sapintia Dei. She writes, "In patristic literature, she was mostly interpreted as Christ, the pre-existent Logos, or as the son of Rationes Aeternae, eternal forms, of the self-knowing primordial causes, exemplars, ideas, and prototypes in the mind of God. She was also considered the archetypus mundus, the archetypal world after whose likeness this sensible world was made, and through which God becomes conscious of himself." I love Marilyn von Franz. Sapientia Dei is thus the sum of archetypal images in the mind of God. Wow. I knew it was archetypal. The prototypes in the mind of God. I'll read von Franz's quote passage again. In patristic literature, she was mostly interpreted as Christ, the pre-existent logos, or as the sum of the rationes aeternae, of the self-knowing primordial causes, exemplars, ideas, and prototypes in the mind of God. She was also considered the archetypus, or archetypus mundus, the archetypal world after whose likeness this sensible world was made, and through which God becomes conscious of himself. Sapientia Dei is thus the sum of archetypal images in the mind of God. End of quote. Thomas Aquinas expresses the same idea. Divine wisdom devised the order of the universe residing in the distinction of things. And therefore we must say that in the divine wisdom are the models of all things, which we have called ideas, i.e., exemplary forms existing in the divine mind. End of quote. The golden woman with the Mona Lisa face in the dream is thus Sophia, or divine wisdom. Her luminous necklace, or blue and gold, would be a kind of celestial rosary which unites on a single circular string various forms and modes of being, as the circle of the year unites the signs of the zodiac, the sum of archetypal images in the mind of God. Do you see how this is all related to the metaphysics? This is metaphysics in the unconscious. It is the conscious recognition of the archetypal images. We'll leave it there before we get to the next dream. We're up to dream 12.